How's it going? And welcome to episode 212 of On the Wire. I am Kevin Hasting. Adam Howe is off this week, and I am lucky enough to be joined by Todd Whitestone, one of our favorite here on the Wire. Been here many, many times, and I think has been here with me when we didn't have Adam in the
That's
past as
right.
well, and probably with Adam when I wasn't here. We love having Todd on anytime, but especially this time of year, because in the past he's told us about some of his research he does in his weekly article over at FTN, his weekly FAAB article. He can be found at Telstar7 on the Twitter machine. And so this is a time of year where we typically like to have Todd anyway. Amazing that he could join me in Adam's absence this week. Todd, how you doing? And thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate it, Kevin. I always like talking with you guys, and yeah, it is a good time because we've had a few weeks of FAAB. We're not like really halfway through the season or anything. There's still plenty of time for course corrections, but it's always interesting to take a look at what's happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll dive into a little more of that here in just a bit. But as usual, we're going to go over some news and notes that we think will affect our FAAB decisions for this coming Sunday as we record here on Friday evening, a few hours earlier than typical. So none of Friday's games have begun yet as we are recording, just for those of you listening on Sunday when this episode drops. So, Todd, first and foremost, Logan Gilbert, his MRI last Sunday revealed a mild flexor strain,
Right.
classified grade 1, and he will not throw for a couple of weeks. Now, it's been almost a week since we were told that, but then he'll be re-examined in another week or so before he even starts throwing again. So how do you see this affecting the Mariners rotation?
Yeah, the Mariners came out today. I don't know if you saw it, and said they were optimistic he'd only be out a couple or 3 weeks. I'm not as optimistic with these kinds of things, Kevin, because it always seems it takes longer, and that's even assuming that nothing bad, really bad happens. So if you're a Logan Gilbert owner, I would say don't plan to be with him on your roster, or on your active roster anyway, through May. If he's back in June, I think you're in good shape. But I think it's going to be a little dicey until we get that sort of update from the Mariners about what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Any interest? Because of course, we've seen this already with George Kirby. So
Right.
Seattle's rotation a little bit down at the moment. Any interest in Logan Evans or Emerson Hancock with the matchups they have upcoming?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both interesting, and they both can be streamed probably. I'm a little more interested in Evans because he's he's been a little bit better at AAA, and also Hancock has really been mediocre in his major league starts. He had one really bad one, his very first start, and then even since then he's been kind of 1.35 WHIP. So I'm not really excited. I mean, if he's pitching at T-Mobile Park, that's a great location. So depending on the matchups, I could see it, but I'd be more interested in perhaps getting Evans than Hancock.
Yeah, I agree. And the matchups support that in my mind this week. It appears Emerson Hancock would pitch at the Athletics there in West Sacramento. And we've already seen a lot of offense in that ballpark. And as it
Right.
continues to warm up, we're going to see more and more, I believe, in that ballpark. While Logan Evans, his start is at home in Seattle. We know that's really tough,
Yeah.
especially for right-handed hitters. And it's Toronto coming to town.
Okay.
So yeah, I agree with everything there.
Okay. Okay. Good. Yeah. Evans, he has uh, he has a 23-4 K to BB in AAA. So that's pretty good. He's not known as a strikeout guy, but that's in 25 and a 2/3 innings. So he's not bad at AAA. Maybe he won't do that in major leagues, but I would say definitely would be worth a stream against Toronto. I would go for that. I'm not sure about a really good offense, though.
Yep, absolutely. Your New York Yankees, Todd. We're
Yeah.
gonna slide over there for a moment. Devin Williams has been removed, and Aaron Boone has said what most of us already believed, that Luke Weaver will get a lot of the opportunities, is I
Right.
believe how he phrased it.
Right.
So this is a pretty easy 1-for-1 with your Yankees. Yeah.
I think so, but Williams did come in non-safe situations twice, Kevin, um, and he did well since that sort of an announcement. So I don't think Boone or the Yankees have given up on Williams to be the closer, but just between us, I've watched Williams, because I'm a Yankee fan, and the problem is not his changeup, which is sort of his out pitch. The problem is his fastball. His fastball was much was down a few miles per hour, so there's not as big of a difference between the fastball and the changeup. So that makes his changeup not as effective. And then he was also not throwing strikes, which made it even worse. So I think, look, he's a pretty good pitcher. I think he can get the role back, and Boone would give him the role back if he has a good outing or two. But Weaver is the better pitcher, I'm telling you. I've seen Weaver the last year and a half, and he's more reliable. So I think Weaver could win out even if Williams gets some more save chances. So definitely, if you can roster Weaver, I would do it. I would hold on to him even if Williams goes back into the ninth inning. And maybe Williams' velocity ticks up. That'd be great. Then you can maybe think about dropping Weaver. But right now, I think Weaver's the more valuable fantasy commodity.
That's awesome to hear. I got a little bit of flack in the offseason prior to the Devin Williams signing.
Uh-huh.
I, yeah, and I it wasn't anything I had against Luke Weaver or his skills, but I was of the belief that the New York Yankees would not go into the season with
Mm-hmm.
Luke Weaver as their assigned ninth inning guy.
Right.
And because they would bring someone in, which they
Right.
did. I didn't
Yes.
have anything against Luke Weaver.
Right.
But now that may not be working out, and it may be, you talked about velocity being down. This could be a health issue with Devin Williams.
Right.
I don't think the Yankees have any qualms whatsoever about allowing Luke Weaver to have this role, and I don't have anything against his performance. I think he'll be great in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just in the offseason, I didn't think the Yankees would quote unquote settle for Luke Weaver as their ninth inning guy.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think they first of all, bolstering the bullpen was sort of a priority because they didn't have the same guys as they did last year. And second of all, to get a closer with the pedigree of Williams was attractive to them. But Williams he's been in the eighth inning before. So when Hader was there, remember?
Yeah,
And he
absolutely.
was quite good there. So I don't know that Williams is one of these guys that I can only pitch in the ninth. So I think, I could be wrong. People can laugh at me, but I think by July, Weaver will be getting more save chances, even if Williams is healthy. Maybe I'll be proven wrong and Williams will right the ship and just be fine. But Weaver is more reliable right now, and he's been doing it for a while. It's not just been 4 weeks of good performance.
Right. Love it. So we do have a little more information now on this next note. Ketel
Uh-huh.
Marte is in the lineup here on Friday for Arizona. He
Right.
is back. The most interesting thing to me, especially reading your note here, and me, I roster Tim Tawa in several leagues,
Right.
and he is not in the lineup on Friday, and it's versus a lefty. So
Oh
that
no.
really hurts if we're not going to see him versus a lefty
Yeah,
even.
yeah. I thought for sure they'd at least use him there, but if they're going to bench him there, they might as well. They're going to make the conclusion they're going to put him down to AAA again because I'm sure they want him to get at bats. But I don't know. That's not a good sign that they just take him completely out of the lineup.
Yeah, we'll have to monitor how this plays out over the rest of the weekend, but, unfortunately, Tim Tawa may be a pretty easy drop
Yeah,
on Sunday
yeah,
evening. Randall Grichuk in the lineup as a designated hitter, and we know we're gonna see him versus lefties
sure.
often anyways. So, uh, Pavin Smith is out of the lineup. That's where Randall Grichuk is taking his spot, but then with Ketel Marte back, the other regular starter out of the lineup, Tim Tawa.
Got
So
you. Okay,
let's
let's.
move on
Yep.
to Atlanta. And I find this very intriguing because I am one of the people over the past couple of seasons when he's been in Atlanta and Atlanta's facing a lot of righties. Eddie Rosario has been there on the waiver wire waiting for us every
Sure,
time
sure.
and performed quite well.
Yeah.
Do you think we see that again now that Jared Kelenic has been optioned and they gave Eddie Rosario a major league deal?
I mean, it could happen. I mean, I think Atlanta's been sort of grasping at straws in the
Oh yeah,
outfield. They've been, they had Kelenic, they've got Verdugo now. They seem to want to do, something sort of inexpensive.
that's
You know,
exactly the word I was going to use.
yeah,
Yes,
they're trying to get somebody on the
they tried
cheap.
Brian De La Cruz.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Who I thought was the best of the bunch, but that's just me. And then the Yankees picked him up, which I don't know if he's going to play. But anyway, yeah, Kelenic. Look, Kelenic, he's had plenty of opportunities. He was a highly touted prospect, as everybody knows, and he just hasn't performed. I mean, first it was maybe the Seattle stadium conditions were hurting him, and then maybe there was too much pressure on him, but no, he's had plenty of at bats across 2 or 3 seasons, and he's just not performed. So Rosario, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think in the right role, Kevin, he could produce. I mean, if you just put him against righties, I think he would be okay. I don't know if Atlanta's going to give him regular at bats. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, Acuna's maybe a month away. Would you say? Uh, so
I read either yesterday or today that he would begin his rehab assignment in a couple of weeks, and I think
yeah,
it'll be fairly lengthy. So about a month would be a good timeline for me.
yeah, maybe 6 weeks. So there's plenty of time for Rosario to play if they're going to indeed do it on the strong side of a platoon. But um, I don't think he'd be my top priority, even if it was facing 6 righties. I want to see it before I go there. Even though he is playing in Colorado this week, I just don't know what to expect.
Yeah, and then coming up, actually, it looks like Atlanta has 4 home games versus Cincinnati.
Uh-huh.
Cincinnati will send 2 lefties out in that 4 games, and then they go to Pittsburgh, who will throw out another couple lefties over the weekend. So
Right.
4 lefties this week. This is not the week to
No,
grab Rosario,
no.
but it'll give us time to see if when he is getting at bats versus righties, if he will be worth an ad in the future.
Right, right. I did put this note down, Kevin. He only had a 531 OPS, sorry, last year in 2024 when he was with Washington and Atlanta. So, I mean, he is showing signs of age, which you would expect. He's 33. So I don't know if I jump in with both feet. Maybe if he gets off to a hot start and he's getting playing time. But otherwise, I would exercise caution.
Yep, absolutely. Heading up to Baltimore, Jordan Westberg and
Mhm.
Gary Sanchez both hit the IL. Westberg, obviously the bigger name here. How do you see this panning out for the Baltimore lineup?
Baltimore, well, what a mess. I mean, I thought they were going to be contenders for the AL East title and American League pennant. And anyway, Westberg was 217 with 4 homers, 0 steals. But I did jot down that he's been banged up all season, Kevin. He's sort of played through various injuries, so I'm hoping that maybe he can sort of get healthy um, during this period with his hamstring issue, and maybe just come back. And I think he's very talented, so I think he would perform well. Ramon Urias is always interesting to me, maybe the way Rosario is interesting to you, because he always seems to produce a reasonable amount. So if people need a third baseman, I would check out Urias and see if you can fit him in on a short-term basis. Otherwise, I think Baltimore is just their whole team's not hitting. I mean, it's just been, and the pitching's been mediocre as well. So I don't know what to say, but I guess it's got to get better, right?
Yeah, and I've been a big fan of Ramon Urias over the past few seasons. It all started with seeing him when I was sorting a leaderboard by hard contact rate,
Uh-huh.
and he was very high. He hits the ball very hard on a regular basis, and we hadn't seen much power this season yet. He was getting more playing time than many of us expected with all these young Baltimore players we were excited to see this season.
Right.
And then this past week, he's popped 2 home runs, so that moderate power is showing up, and he's hitting almost 300. He's been very valuable already, and I
Yeah.
think this solidifies his playing time a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Baltimore can't really be choosy. They don't have anybody else right now, and he's been one of the better hitters. So, I mean, I just feel like he's going to play at least for the next 2 to 3 weeks. So, if you need a corner player, and Urias is out there, I would say you could definitely use him.
Yep. Emmanuel Rivera is who they called up. We typically only see him versus lefties over the past few seasons, but he is in the lineup giving Ramon Urias a rest on
Okay.
Friday,
Okay.
and they are facing a righty. I'm not reading anything into this. Urias has been playing regularly. I just think it's a regular day off, even though they're
Yeah.
facing a righty.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with that. I think he'll get most of the playing time.
Are we surprised that Tyler Glasnow is heading to the IL, Todd?
I don't think you or me or any of the listeners would be surprised either. But people that drafted him rolled the dice, and I think he may come back and pitch well later. But I wasn't going to draft him. I just think he's too unreliable, and he's got talent for sure. But yeah, I don't think we can claim surprise.
What do you think? Is there any opportunities for us fantasy
Yeah,
managers
yeah.
in LA?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a key spot right now. We got Ben Kasparius, who's really been pitching only a couple innings at a time, but they're talking about stretching him out, and he has looked pretty good. So I'm interested in him, but the Dodgers haven't said for sure that he's starting. So that's one name to file away. The other is, of course, Tony Gonsolin, who pitched well in his first time back. But, they're sort of throwing it together, Kevin, with chewing gum and sort of tobacco or whatever. They got Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin, who are just back from injuries. And, they're talking about maybe Landon Knack coming up again. He's not done well. Kershaw is sort of on the mend. But, for the runaway top choice to win the title, I think they got some question marks at pitching.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. As you said, none of this is official yet,
Right.
but Justin over at Roster Resource on Fangraphs has them using 7 different starting pitchers this coming week, including Landon Knack and Bobby Miller getting another opportunity.
Oh my goodness.
That actually helps a couple of guys we'll be interested in FAAB this week in Kasparius and Tony Gonsolin, where he's still
Right.
available,
Right.
because they will not pitch at Arizona next weekend, a lineup that we are a little fearful of.
Right.
They'll just have their starts at Miami beginning of the week. That's going to make them pretty popular ads this weekend.
And that's if it holds, because they haven't confirmed Kasparius as far as I know.
Right. No, I don't
So,
believe so.
so I think if you're interested in fabbing Kasparius in particular, I would check the probable pitchers or any statement by the Dodgers. But yes, I'm very interested in him, and hopefully maybe if they don't even confirm what they're doing, it might even help us to get him in on waivers. So I would just keep that in mind for people, just to see if they can sort of sneak him in for maybe a lower amount or a lower waiver claim.
Yep, absolutely. We get somebody returning from the IL. We've been talking quite a bit of guys either being sent down or to the IL. Here's somebody coming back, Lance
Right,
McCullers.
right.
We'll see him on Sunday. So in NFBC formats, if he was not drafted, we won't have him available to us yet
Hmm.
in FAAB this week. So we'll probably get to see him a couple of times
Right.
before he is available next week. What are you expecting out of Lance McCullers?
Geez, I mean, he's another one, Kevin, that I just don't expect to stay healthy. I just it's too many injuries, too much time. But he did get up to 71 pitches in his last rehab start. So I think while his arm is holding together, sure, I think you could go for an ad and see how it goes. He's certainly talented, but I just feel like he throws sort of some hellacious breaking stuff, and I'm just not
Oh, that
sure.
curveball is amazing when he's healthy, but as you're alluding to, it may be part of the reason he's not
Yeah,
often healthy.
I mean, when you throw the breaking stuff that hard, I'm no doctor, but I just feel like that puts a lot of stress on the arm, and So anyway, look, I would say I'm not arguing with anyone who wants to add him and start him a couple of times, but don't expect that you're going to have him, in August or September.
Yeah, and just the a word of caution with if he looks really good.
Yeah,
He's got a soft landing spot. I mean, it's too bad he's not available to us
yeah,
this coming week. Uh, um, we obviously couldn't get him for his start at the Chicago White Sox this
right.
Sunday. We would love that. And then Cincinnati away from Great America Small Park this
Yeah,
coming week. Cincinnati has picked it up a little bit recently, but their lineup hasn't been good this season
yeah,
either. So he might look pretty darn good and fool us when better competition comes
right,
along.
right. I'd almost rather, with my point of view, that he pitched against the White Sox Saturday, and then he looked really good, and then everybody would bid lots of money because
There you go.
I just feel like he's the kind of guy that can do a beautiful start, especially against the White Sox. I mean, but anyway, so yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple weeks in FBC leagues, a daily league. You could certainly try it on Sunday or next week, but I would just not expect a long-term solution.
Perfect. Alexis Diaz, we've seen this come in for some time now, officially optioned to AAA.
Right.
So not only out of the closing role, but off of the roster for at least a little while. This has been going on for a few weeks now. Uh, do you think the closing situation in Cincinnati might finally be fairly clear to us?
I don't know about that, but the clarity is that Alexis Diaz is not getting saves, not just not just in the short term. I think he's out for the season. I mean, he was always on thin ice, and everybody sort of knew that he was one of the weaker closers. But he sort of, through a confluence of events, he sort of held on to the job, even though he wasn't doing that well. Anyway, Emilio Pagan seems to be the guy right now, but even I wouldn't be that convinced that he's going to do it for the whole year. They have Tony Santillan, Graham Ashcraft, maybe some other guys I'm not thinking of. But anyway, I would say Alexis Diaz is just a non-factor. People should just drop him. I don't think even if he gets back to the majors that he's going to get save chances.
Yeah, I agree. And if I'm wrong, I'm okay
Yeah,
with missing out.
yeah,
There's 30 teams out there closing games, so there's going to be a few I'm not interested in, and
exactly.
I'm with you here.
Yeah.
I am with you. All right, we have a couple other news and notes here, and we'll get to them right after this quick break. All right, welcome back. This is On the Wire. I am Kevin Hasting, joined this week by Todd Whitestone of FTN Fantasy. Todd, a few more news and notes here until we get into your weekly article a little bit.
Sure, sure.
Luke Raley to the IL. He was off to a bit of a slow start, had
Right.
just started to maybe show some signs of coming out of it. He was a pretty popular guy in deeper leagues where we can stomach a large side platoon guy
Mhm.
in certain situations. So what do you see for Luke Raley and the Mariners lineup while he's out?
Yeah, I mean, well, Rayleigh's going to be out for a while. I think they said a minimum of 6 weeks. I had him rostered on one team, and he's kind of a good guy to have because he's first base and outfield eligible both. So it's kind of
Yep.
nice to have, and I do think he was picking it up, but I don't know if it's possible to hold him through this period. The two guys that I had highlighted, Kevin, were Samad Taylor, who I think you know because he used to be on the Royals. And
Yeah, absolutely. Back when he was stealing 50 bases in the minors,
yeah,
he was a Kansas City Royals
yeah, he's always
organization.
been
Yeah.
a speed guy, but he actually has hit a few homers in AAA this year, which was surprising. So maybe he's unlocked something. He started Wednesday, and I didn't see the final lineup, but they had Rylan Thomas, Rhylan Thomas, slated in possibly to start tonight. He's a lefty, so I don't know if they're going to split time between those two guys, or what. If that's the case, I don't think we can be as interested. If one of them is to win out, I think a regular job could be a plus. But with the park, and unless it's really somebody like Taylor who's going to run a lot, I would say I'm not spending a lot of money to try to find out.
Right. The fortunate thing here is it appears, as you said, that this could be a pretty straight platoon with these two guys. That's what
Yeah.
we have seen the first two games that they've
Okay.
been here on Thursday and Friday. Fortunately for us, Seattle faces a lefty and a righty on Saturday and Sunday in
Okay.
Texas, so we'll have a pretty good idea. If it's 2-2, them facing each facing one of them two lefties, the other the two righties, we probably won't have much interest.
Yeah. Then I think we just bow out unless you're desperate for a steal or something like that.
Yep, absolutely. Another closing situation that we had already started to see some movement, but now Justin Martinez officially to the injured list.
Right.
What are you thinking we're going to see here in Arizona? This one's still muddy.
Yeah, it's still muddy. I think Shelby Miller is the guy with the edge. He's gotten 2 saves, and he's been really good, Kevin. His numbers are really good this year. So
Yep.
I think he's going to be the guy short term. Again, I'm not sure how long he holds the job. Kevin Ginkel is kind of the guy that people are pointing to, that he got saves last year and he's just back from the injured list. So they may sort of filter him in half of the saves, or maybe he'll take over later in the year. So if you want to sort of stash a guy, maybe Ginkel is a good bet. But they also have Ryan Thompson, Dre Jameson. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't think Justin Martinez is a hold myself, just because I think he has some real problems, and I'm not sure in terms of injury, and I'm not sure that he gets the closing job back, even if he comes back in 2 weeks and he's kind of healthy.
Yep, I agree. I lean Shelby Miller here as well, and yeah, the as much as Martinez's velocity was down, that this could be a fairly long term
Yeah,
injury as
yeah,
well.
he could be out for a while, and I just feel like it was something more significant. And he always, Kevin, you know this, he always had control problems, even when he was pitching fine. So I'm not sure he's the perfect closer anyway, because he tends to walk guys a little too much. So for him to get back and be the closer again, I would rather bet against that rather than on it.
Yep, I agree. A bit of a surprise in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not a huge surprise to those rostering Jake Berger. His performance been not so good to start this season, but we've seen him have slow starts before and turn it around. In
Right.
my opinion, I am definitely holding on to my Jake Berger shares
Yeah.
for now.
Yes.
But while he's down, there's an interesting guy Texas called up here to replace Berger. It seems in the lineup at first base.
Yeah. So, yeah, first of all, I was surprised too. And I do have Jake Berger rostered. So I'm going to try to hold him and hope that he sort of figures it out down there. I will say in his defense, Kevin, that he is not the only Texas Rangers batter that's having some issues. So, I mean, I'm not sure why he was the guy, but maybe, who knows?
Yep.
Maybe he
I
even,
honestly think it. I honestly think it's a good thing.
yeah,
I
maybe,
think this indicates that the organization sees something specific that they want him
yeah,
to work on
yeah.
rather than hammer through this at the major league level, which I think they would be fine with because to your point, they're allowing others to do that.
Right, I agree. And for all we know, Berger might have said, he would like to do it. You don't have no idea that he might want to reset, and they might know him as a personality better than we do, and just
Yeah.
say this is the kind of guy that if he continues to struggle, could really spiral down. So I'm not going to prejudge that too much, but the guy you're mentioning is Blaine Crim, Crim, and he seems like he's going to play first base regularly. From what I know of him, which is not a heck of a lot, he's a 27-year-old. He's not a big prospect in the past, and he's a real big guy. So if he connects, the ball goes a long way. So that's great. But he does have issues with strikeouts, as you would guess. So again, I would watch him. I would see if he gets off to a hot start. Maybe that buys him some more time. He's batting 8th tonight. So I don't think the Rangers are expecting a huge amount. But we'll see. Certainly if you're desperate for a corner infielder, he could be used and just to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see, and we won't know because I think he's going to be uh, not necessarily a must add, but I think he's going to be fairly popular for people
Yeah.
to grab as a speculative corner, just like you're talking.
Yep.
And it's intriguing to me. He was drafted in 2019, and he was a college guy, so he was 22 years old when he was drafted, and then we know there were no minor leagues in 2020. So
Right.
I think that being 27 years old
True. True.
might keep some people away when really he's only had 3 seasons of professional baseball.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
Um, and so I think this is in an intriguing situation to me for a guy that has nice walk rates throughout the minors, nice
Mm-hmm.
strikeout rates.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm interested to see, he's projected for 3 or 4 home runs in 120-ish plate appearances. Well, if he's going to be the everyday guy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's mid-teens to 20 home runs
Sure.
pace for the time that we will see him. So yeah, I'm intrigued here while Berger is out, if he is going to indeed get the everyday playing time.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. He does have 7 homers in AAA so far.
Yep.
I just, it's a big step up to major league pitching. I'm just not sure if he's ready for that. But look, there's been plenty of people that have come up and really hit well in the beginning. So I definitely watch him, and depending on your needs for your corner infield, I definitely think he's worth considering or putting in a waterfall.
Absolutely. Couple more IL trips here,
Hmm.
unfortunately, to
Yeah,
wrap up the news and notes, and a couple of big names. We'll go back out to Los Angeles. Mike Trout officially to the injured list. They're
yeah.
calling it knee soreness, and they're optimistic it will be a short IL stint, is what we're being told. Uh, that we were told that all last season, and we never saw him come back.
I know, I know. I feel bad. He's such a great player, but I mean,
Yep.
I just don't. I don't draft him not because I just can't depend on him. But yeah, I hope he comes back quickly. They're always optimistic, Kevin, at the beginning, and sometimes it doesn't work out. But it seems like Gustavo Campero could be the early guy to get the shot in the outfield. He's a switch hitter. He seems to be a guy that runs, at least in the minor leagues. So I mean, the Angels need every type of offense they can muster. So I would think if he can get on base, he would be able to run. So if you need speed and you need an outfielder, I would say Campero could be considered. I'm not sort of touting him as a great player, but maybe he could be a fill-in.
Absolutely. Probably gives, Kyron Paris a little longer leash,
Yeah, yeah,
now that he's started to fall off a little bit.
right.
Uh, I I still want to be in on Joe Adell, and there were times last season when we picked him up off the waiver wire, and he was giving us some home runs and giving us, more stolen bases than I think we were, even expecting out of him.
Right,
But
right.
it's just he's never gotten away from being a batting average drain for our teams.
Yeah, I know. I know. I feel like he's similar to Christopher Morel. He
Yeah.
we always we want these guys that can run and hit for power to be more reliable, and they just don't seem to be able to get over the hump. But some of them actually do make the leap, so it is worth keeping hope alive. But yeah, I don't know if Adele this year is happening either. It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, let's end up back with your New York Yankees, Todd,
Yeah.
here. Another IL stint, but I am very intrigued, and I probably would have hit you up via DM or text anyway to get your opinion
Uh-huh.
on the guy that's going to take Jazz Chisholm's place here. It seems because of Aaron Boone's comments this morning. Once again, he used that very specific term a lot. We're going to see him a lot. So,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
do you think here?
Well, I do think he's going to play. He's going to play a lot. Unless he starts hitting 150 as with any situation. But we're talking about Yorbit Vivas, Vivas. He's age 24. His major league debut is tonight, and he was hitting 319, a couple of homers and 6 steals at AAA. I do think he's got potential, Kevin. If you have a middle infield spot that you can spare, I would put him in there. Um, I'm not sure he's a world beater or any. I do think he's a contributor in steals. I'm not sure about the power. Okay, so if you need steals, I would say he's a good add. The power would be sort of a bonus, but of course, if he's playing at Yankee Stadium, and I don't know if the kid can hit to the opposite field, but if he can hit opposite field to right, then maybe he could get a few homers that way. So I would definitely put him on the list of consideration. I don't know really. I don't know enough about him to say, go get him or anything like that. It's just too early. But the playing time, which is what you and I have talked about in the past, as the number one hurdle, right? So if they got the playing time, that you can always start with that, and then if it really doesn't work, you can back off. But I would say that certainly gets him over the line in terms of a consideration as a FAAB target.
I agree, and I think we'll get a pretty good idea. I expect that we see him in the lineup all weekend, and
Yeah,
if that's the
yeah,
case, then yeah, absolutely, there will
yep.
be interest on Sunday evening.
definitely.
I think that's going to wrap up our news and notes for this episode, Todd.
Okay.
We probably missed some things as always. So to keep up with the news of the day, I hope everybody is listening to Nick Pollock's Plus Pitch podcast and his the First Pitch podcast with Jake Crumpler and Trevor Huth as well on in the mornings. So in a moment, we're going to dive in a little bit to your weekly article, Todd, and some of the research you've done over the past few seasons with some trends. As I said at the beginning of the show, we typically do like talking to you about now, and we'll bring up why here in just a moment after this quick break. All right, we are back. This is On the Wire. I am Kevin Hasting. Adam Howe is off this week, but I am lucky enough to be joined by Todd Whitestone of FTN. And Todd, you write a weekly FAAB article for
Yes.
FTN. We've talked about it many times on this show. It's a great piece that I read every week, and you also you go into like some year over year trends
Right.
in your article, and you've talked about it with us here on this show. And this is the time of year that you bring up every time. So
Right.
I'm
Right.
just going to give you the floor and tell us what you have found over the past few seasons as you've dove into the main event specifically and
Right.
how FAAB is spent throughout the year.
Yes. So thank you, Kevin, for those kind words. Well, I
Of
do
course.
write a weekly article. It's on the NFBC main event, which if people don't know, it's a 57 leagues, 15 teams each, and there's an overall prize as well as league prizes for those. And the owners are very engaged because of the entry fee. So it's a little better to look at this kind of league than a free Yahoo or ESPN league where some people drop out. And so I would like sort of diving into it. Right now in the main event, we're through, I think it was 6 weeks, if I'm correct. People have spent, the average main event owner has spent 328 out of 1,000. So that means there's $672 remaining. The winning bids are up 3%, 9,500 or so. And that means that the average owner is winning about 11 bids per main event in the main event so far this year. And that compares to about, with 328 spent, that compares to 290 last year, where people sort of saved. And as you mentioned, I follow this each year, and the aberration was actually last year. Last year was the year that everybody sort of held back. And maybe that was a function of the previous year where it was sort of a situation where there would seem to be like one big call up every week, and sort of it kept it was the highest FAAB spending I think that I've witnessed. So like there was Tanner Bybee one week, and I forget, Taj Bradley, I believe. Anyway, there was one big one each week, and that sort of
And most weeks it was a big arm as well, like the two you
yeah.
mentioned.
Yeah. It was a lot of pitchers and even a few hitters thrown in, and it was sort of evenly spaced out. So it was really, and so I think people sort of made a conscious decision last year to hold back. But anyway, this year we're back sort of in the normal zone of spending, which means that people in the early part, when they feel they have a lot of FAAB, are spending $50, $60, $70 per week. And I jotted down the last 4 weeks, Kevin, of the spending on the average owner: 54, 70, 59, 87. Now the 87 was because of Nick Kurtz and Agustin Ramirez. They were driving that, but still, it's not unusual to have $50 to $80 per week in this sort of week 3 to 8 zone of the season. So my comment has always been, when you and Adam talk about this, is I think this is an opportunity for people that are in FAAB leagues to hold back just a little. I'm not saying spend, $10 a week or something, but this is an opportunity to hold back and then be at least in the upper part of the FAAB remaining in your league. Now, each league is different. So you have to check your league. Some leagues spend, hugely, and you have to sort of combat that. In other leagues, even in the main events, they spend very little or relatively little. And one way to tell, I should mention this, Kevin, is that what I do sometimes is you can go in and see how much FAAB dollars each team in your league has left, and you can add it up. So, for example, the average left is 672 in all leagues, all 57. But if you go into your main event league or your NFBC league, it doesn't have to be main event, and add up the other 14 teams, you can get a number and divide by 14, excluding your own, and say, well, in my league, the average left is 400, and that could give you a different feel than if you it said, well, there's 800 per team left in mine. So I would take a look at that. You don't have to do this every week, of course. You can just do this once in a while, but it helps because just to go by the average of all 57 is not necessarily what you want to do. But anyway, the point is, if you can be in the upper part of the FAAB, you don't have to be number one in FAAB remaining. Then in June, July, and August, you can get more of the players that you want by bidding even $30 or $40 rather than trying to spend 80 or 90 now and then having to really pull back. So I would consider, and Kevin, I think you've said this in the past, what type of player you're adding. If it's a player like Agustin Ramirez that you think he's my catcher for the rest of the season, certainly you got to bid more, and you should bid more on a guy like that. If it's a player that you think, and we've talked about a couple that, like Krim, it could be good for 4 weeks, let's say, then you want to spend a moderate amount. And if there's a player that you think, I'm picking him up for this week, even if you think he's a great fit, I would not be spending more than $10 or $15, maybe even less. I don't know. So it's a discipline, and it allows you to be a little bit more of a player later in the season, and maybe control your destiny a little bit. It's very tempting to bid a lot of money on all these guys. Everybody's writing them up and saying, this guy could be excellent. He could fill in, and he's hitting 300 in the minors, but there's a lot of guys that hit 300 in the minors. So, I would just caution to try to hold back a little, check your league to see where you stand, and then try to be at least in the upper third of FAAB remaining in your league as we get to the dog days of summer.
Yeah, I love it, Todd, and I've paid really close attention to this over the past couple of seasons since you began these articles and we began having these conversations,
Right.
and it really is about now over the next couple of weeks. I have noticed the amount it takes to get certain types of players goes down.
Yep.
Right. And then I couple that with it was the middle of last season when I first heard Vlad Sedler, and I think it was something he had come up with around that time, because he talked about he was making a change to this when we're doing our churning and burning on a weekly basis. I don't bid $20-25 for the guy that
Right.
my first choice anymore.
Right.
We have our waterfalls. We have this group of players because they all can help us in that spot that we need. So I've dropped that amount, and I'm perfectly fine if I get my fifth or sixth choice.
Right.
And that
Right.
does two things. One, it gives us that more spending power later in the year that you've been talking about. It helps that as well. But it also means the one or two guys I do want to splurge on, throughout the season, it gives me more opportunity to do that when I'm not spending as much on in my weekly budget.
Right, exactly. And that's what you want to do. Like if you want to go big on Agustin Ramirez or Nick Kurtz or something, you can do that. You just don't want to do that. I find the guys, the 90 to $100 bids are the dangerous ones because those seem like, well, you're not going crazy, but these add up pretty quickly, and
Yep.
yeah, sometimes you need a guy, like sometimes it's just desperation. There's a saves guy, you need him. But I would just say, think twice about it, and then to your point, about week 8, 9, 10 is when the big spending is going to start to tail. And so
Yep.
know that you're going to be able to get guys for less money as it sort of trends down, and make that adjustment, because if you're still bidding big, you're going to spend more than you need to as it goes down in weeks 8, 9, 10, 11. And that's another thing to keep in mind also. That happens every year.
Yep, and don't forget the holiday weekends. You
Yes,
can drop your bids. There's gonna be far less of your opponents making bids at all. We have Memorial Day weekend coming up, that's a big one,
right.
4th of July, all throughout the season. The holiday weekends, don't forget to lower your bids.
That's right. That's right. That always happens. Some people don't make any bids on those weekends, but I mean, the main event is pretty good, and that's what reason I like it. But even there is generally less. It's just a question of
Yep,
whether there's a big name or not. That's what usually drives it in the main event.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Todd. That's amazing. Once again, everybody can check this out. We're a weekly article at FTN,
Right.
free, not behind a paywall. I
Right.
believe that's
Exactly.
still the
Yep.
case.
Yep. Still the case.
So yeah, everybody should be checking that out on a weekly basis. It's been part of my weekly routine for since pretty much since you started doing it, Todd. Love it. Thank
Okay.
you.
No problem. I'm happy you enjoy it.
All right, let's dive in and give some listeners a few names for this coming week.
Sure.
As always, we break it down by categories here, and we'll start off with power. Typically, we think home runs. Don't forget RBI is we're also talking about here when we're talking power. Who do you like that may be available this week?
Okay, so I had a couple names, Kevin. Trevor Larnach is 91% owned in 12s and all completely owned in 15s. And I'm going to go by the 12 team online championship and the NFBC main event in these numbers. But
Yep.
some of the people that play in other, home leagues and stuff, I would check to see if Trevor Larnach is available. He's hitting really well, and he's I think more than just your average platoon bat. But my main recommendation is Trent Grisham, who is a Yankee, and so you can say I'm biased, but I mean, I've been watching him. He's a different hitter, Kevin, than he was last year. I mean, I just viewed him as he's a good glove. He's fine. Put him out there in the 8th inning when we were ahead, but he's driving the ball. He's hitting barrels, and he's Boone is hitting him number 1 in the lineup against right-handed pitchers. And he's only 54% owned in 12s, 97% in the main event. But he's hit 273 of the past 2 weeks with 4 homers. So, I mean, I don't see any reason why the guy is going to stop. I mean, of course, his recent past is not great, but this is the kind of guy that you want to grab. And then, yeah, if he tails off in June, you can drop him. But I certainly believe that he's a guy to pick up right now.
Yeah, I agree. I was fortunate that I had been using Trent Grisham in a daily lineup league that I was
Mhm.
in. And when I started realizing that I was using him more and more days because he was in the Yankees lineup, I picked him up
Oh,
in
good.
FAAB. But before now it seemed before I it was luck. It was nothing I saw coming. But it was I guess I did. I saw the playing time he was
Yeah, yeah,
getting,
yeah,
but
yeah. Sure.
yeah, he has been fantastic. I'll add a couple of names. Um, Andrew Benintendi is back. Seems like he's hitting for the power that he did last season when he
Yep.
got to 20 home runs. Not a great lineup, so not you won't get the typical runs and RBI we would expect from a 20 home run hitter, but he's available in most 12s, about 74% of them, almost 100% rostered in the main event.
Right.
And then a guy that's available everywhere, and I was surprised. This is something to continue to monitor over the weekend. Jonkinzie Noel, Big Christmas, right? We typically think of him as a small side platoon guy, and that's what we have seen in the past. He's played 6 of the last 8 games for Cleveland versus right-handed starting pitching. If this is going to keep up and you can stomach a 220-ish batting average, the power will be there, and he's
Yeah.
available everywhere.
Yeah, he's got big power, and I think he's winning out at the expense of Nolan Jones, right?
Yeah,
Nolan Jones was getting every day at bat. So if people have Jones, you might want to consider a switch because Jones
right.
is not currently getting the time. But so anyway, yeah, I agree with him. He's if he gets hot, he could hit 5 homers in a week, no doubt.
Yeah, I was looking at this earlier. It's kind of funny. I was like, how do you get more playing time when you're hitting 190? Oh, it's when you're the guy you're competing with is hitting 150. That's how.
You're winning out. You're winning out.
Yeah. How about speed? Stolen bases,
Sure.
runs. Yeah, you did put in the notes here. We talked about Samad Taylor. If he
Yeah.
does get some playing time, he will run.
Yeah.
But you have a couple other names here for us as well.
Yeah. I mean, Zach McKinstry in Detroit, 60% owned. He's 100% in the 15s, but 60% in the 12s. He's playing again every day pretty much, and he's eligible at like 3 or 4 positions. I forget exactly. But yeah, he's hitting well, and he does run. He's not what we consider to be a speed guy, but he does steal bases, and he's hitting 390. I put down over the last 14 days, so I would consider him if you can. And I put down for deeper leagues, Adam Frazier. Again, he's not a guy people get excited about, but he is getting playing time in Pittsburgh, 34 at bats. And he's hitting 390 over his last 14 days. He's got 3 steals. So if he gets on base, he is going to run. Pittsburgh, they don't have many ways to create offense, and they're going to try to steal
We're
base.
turning everybody loose.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Frazier is quick. He's not a burner like Chandler Simpson or something, but he's quick, and he knows the game. He knows how to steal a base. So if you're desperate, I think he's eligible at a couple of positions as well. I don't have it in front of me. So those are my 2 recommendations.
Yep. Great ads. Another guy that I'm going to bring up, same thing. I had picked him up to use on probably a Monday or Thursday when there weren't many teams playing. So I picked up Atlanta's shortstop, Nick Allen. And he's still on my roster. And since then, I have added him in a couple of weekly FAAB leagues as well because he is the everyday shortstop. Orlando Arcia is getting about 1 start a week, and Nick Allen gets that 1 day a week off. He's playing about 6 out of 7 games, and he's up to 5 stolen bases on the year. He's on pace to steal 30 bases quietly, hitting with a decent batting average as well. Hits at the bottom of the order, but Atlanta, one of the teams we feel that they can turn it over, and he should get his 4 plate appearances most days. And Nick Allen's available in 96% of NFBC 15 and 12 team leagues.
That's great. Now, if he holds on to that roster, that spot in the lineup, Kevin, he'd be batting in front of Ronald Acuna. So that would not be terrible either. So I don't know if he'll be number 9 in the lineup at that point, but certainly a good guy worth adding.
Excellent. So opportunity for this week. We're looking for guys, a few more plate appearances. Maybe they've moved around in the lineup. We talk a little bit about the schedule here. pretty standard schedule. Most teams play 6 games this week. None play 5.
Mhm.
6 teams do play 7. That's the White Sox and Kansas City Royals. They have a 4-game series against each other. So do Atlanta and Cincinnati,
Mhm.
and Arizona and the LA Dodgers. Those are the 6 teams with 7 games this week. Colorado is home for all 6. I believe this is the first time all season for those in full weekly lineup leagues where you can't change out hitting lineups on Friday. Colorado at home for 6. Cincinnati on the road for 4 at Atlanta, and on the
Mhm.
road for 3 more at
Mhm.
Houston. So they are one of the teams with 7 games this week, but they're on the road for all 7.
Mhm.
Tampa, they're back home for another 6. You know, this is a very heavily home favored schedule for early in the season for Tampa. I think it's something like 60 of the first 84 games are home games.
Oh, really?
I believe they're trying to avoid the hot, humid
Yeah.
thunderstorms
Yeah.
later in the summer there in Florida. So they're back home for 6, and then after being on the road this week, the Athletics get to go back to their new home ballpark in West Sacramento, which I just think is going to continue to get better and better for the hitters
Right.
as it
Right.
heats up
Right.
out there. So
Yeah.
some pretty favorable ballparks with some heavy schedules this week. With all of that and anything else in mind, who are you looking at that's been getting a better opportunity as of late or will this coming week?
Okay, so I'm looking at Kevin, 3 sort of platoon batters. The first one is Mike Yastrzemski for the Giants. They have 5 of 6 right-hand pitchers at Wrigley and Target Fields, which I think could be really good for him. Uh, the pitchers he's going to face, I jotted down: Colin Ray, uh, Ben Brown, Bailey Ober, Chris Paddock, and Pablo Lopez. That's not exactly a murderer's row of pitchers, and he's been hitting very well. He's owned 52% in 12s and 95% in 15s, and he's 7 for 24, 292 with 2 homers in his last week. So I would say he's the number 1 priority for me if you're just looking for a weekly hitter. Number 2 would be Max Kepler. They have 6 of 6 right-hand pitchers. He's 79% and 100%. He's also hit a couple of homers this week, and I do think he's in that lineup. He gets a lot of RBI opportunities, so he's sort of supported by the team around him. But he's a good hitter. Against righties, he's dangerous. And then the last one is more of a deep league on the Yankees. Oswaldo Cabrera, if you're looking for a third baseman. Yankees get 5 of 6 righties, and as you mentioned, 3 of these games are in West Sacramento, so that could be good for offense. So he's 0% owned in 12s and 5% in 15s, but he does play against righties. Excuse me. He's hit 302 with 1 homer over his last 14 days. He's generally not a power guy, but if you need a guy to fill in, I think he's going to play, and the Yankees could score runs. So I would certainly take a look at him if you want to just fill a guy in for a week.
Yep, absolutely. Love all 3 of those guys. Mike Yastrzemski actually stealing a couple bases here and there as
Oh,
well.
yeah,
Little
yeah.
icing on the cake. So that's been nice to see. I'll just add Brooks Baldwin. I
Mhm.
grabbed him in a couple of spots last week. He is playing every day for the Chicago White Sox. Once again, not a great lineup, and he hits towards the bottom third, usually in that 6 or 7 spot. But moderate power, moderate speed, a guy that can give you a handful of home runs and stolen bases. And even in that lineup, I think he's going to get on base enough to give us our runs and RBI counting stats as
Definitely.
well, as a fill in here and there when you can use him.
Yep, I agree. I agree with that.
All right, let's switch over to pitching, Todd. Wins and Ks right out of the gate. A couple of these guys we've talked about,
Yep.
but you have a couple more on here that you've briefly mentioned, but not really talked about much.
Yeah.
Who you like for wins and Ks this week?
Okay, so I got 4 names. A couple we mentioned. Colin Ray for the Cubs. He gets San Francisco. Then next week, I think he gets a 2-step Miami and the White Sox. He doesn't get much better than that. So I would, if you're interested in that, and he's available, only 43% owned in 12s. He's completely owned in the main event. I would pick him up this week so that you have him. So he's interesting. Also, I mentioned Lucas Giolito, who I thought would be more owned, but he's only 21% owned in 12s and only 86% in the main event. So he's kicking around a few main events.
That surprised me as well.
Yeah, I know. So I'm surprised. So I would check for him. Again, I mean, I think he's got health concerns, but as a short-term option, I think he's very usable. He gets Texas and at KC, so a 2-start week this week. So I would look at him for second. The third guy is Tony Gonsolin, we mentioned, and he's only 25%. And I found this weird, Kevin. He's 19% owned in the main, so he's more owned in 12s than you don't usually see that.
Not very often.
Yeah, not very often. Anyway, Gonsolin, I mean, the Dodgers don't have anybody to put in instead of him, so he's going to pitch. And he pitched pretty well in his first outing. I think he's reasonably good, and the Dodgers are one of the best offenses in the league. So certainly he's usable. He's at Miami this week, which is like tremendous. And then he'd get the Athletics but at home in Dodger Stadium. So he might be usable there too. So he's the third one. And the last one is, we mentioned Ben Kasparius. And again, that's depending on whether he gets actually named into the rotation. But he's only 3% owned and 70% in the main. And he would get theoretically Miami this week and maybe the Athletics next week.
Very nice. I'll add a couple of man, I'm all over Chicago White Sox this week. Hopefully Mike Carter's listening, because it's not often that his White Sox get much love. But a couple of guys with 2 starts this week. Both of these guys will pitch at Kansas City, which in spite of being on a nice run here, 9-1 their last 10 games, the Royals have only scored over 4 runs in a game 4 times all season. They played 32 games at this point, I believe. 4 times have they scored over 4 runs. So I'm definitely not scared of Kansas City's offense. And then back home versus Miami. This is Shane Smith, who is almost 100% rostered in mains and
Right.
a little over 3/4 rostered in 12s, but he is available 97% mains. So it's always worth checking, as Adam likes to say.
Right.
Only takes a second. And then Sean Burke, who a lot of people were really excited about in the offseason and to begin the season. And he came out of the gate and had a brilliant performance in his first start of the season, and then got shelled for 3 or 4.
Right.
Has been much better his last couple now, including a really good start just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And so at 25% rostered in main events, I think that will spike back up to close to 100% this week for this 2-step at Kansas City and versus Miami.
Yeah. I've been more impressed with Smith. I do have him on a couple of rosters. I think I like him better, but you can't argue with these matchups. I mean, these are great. If you're not gonna use these guys, then you're not gonna use them at all.
Off your list.
Yeah, really.
Exactly. All right, you have a couple of great names here for ratios. ERA, WHIP, as I typically do. You went with relievers that don't typically get the 9th inning here, and I love both these names.
Yeah, these guys are good. I mean, they're good pitchers. Randy Rodriguez, San Francisco Giants. He's really 0% owned in 12s, 9% in the main, which is actually more than I thought it would be. Anyway, he's pitched 12.2 innings. He has a 16-0 K to BB ratio, which is tough to beat that. And the only runs he's given up was in his last outing. He gave up a 2-run homer to Xander Bogaerts. But I think he's still an excellent pitcher. And if you need whip help or strikeouts, and you can fit him in, certainly I think he's well worth rostering and putting in the lineup. The second guy is Steven Okert, who's with the Astros. He's not owned anywhere, as far as I can tell. He's got 15 innings. He's got a 17-0 K to BB ratio. And also, he's kicked in a win and a save so far this year. So I think he might be the guy that they turn to when Hader is not available, right? So anyway, he's been excellent. He'd be another fine person to have on your bench, or if you're just hoping to not start a guy that has a matchup that you really hate. I've got a few of those myself. So those two guys I think are very, very safe, at least for now.
Nice. Yeah, this is one of my favorite categories, and I've been saying most weeks. Rick Graham puts a couple of weekly articles out at Pitcher List. One is saves plus holds. One is just holds. It's really easy to go to that list because if you're in an NFBC league where holds are not a category, the
Right.
guys on the top of this list are available.
Yeah,
Right?
sure.
The guys and so I take a look at that match. Typically, I want a 7-game week. If they don't pitch on Sunday, that's amazing. Icing on the cake. Maybe we get an extra inning or two out of them for the week. A couple of guys he's got really high on his list this week: Gabe Spire in Seattle and Ryan Zefferjon of the Angels. And Zefferjon is striking out not a K per 9, 2 Ks per 9, basically. He has 18 strikeouts in like 9 1/3 innings so far this season. So guys like that are always capable of, one, helping us stabilize our ratios, which is what we're really looking at here. But then the possibility of snagging a win or a save for us is
Sure.
always there with the big strikeout guys.
Sure, because the manager loves to bring those kind of guys in when it's a tie game or something, and that's when you can get a win, you know.
Yep.
But 2 strikeouts per 9, that's like the fielders don't even need to go out to their position, right? So just send the pitcher and the catcher out there.
Yeah, exactly. We've talked a little bit about a couple of ninth inning situations not being so stable. So who would you target if they're available in FAAB this week for saves?
Okay, so I'm leaning towards Shelby Miller, who's I think got the gig in the short term in Arizona. He's 13% owned in 12s, 75% in mains. He was picked up a little, but he's not completely owned. He's pitched very well. He's got a 15-4 K to BB in 12.2 innings. I think as long as he keeps doing that, he's going to hold the job. Kevin Ginkel is the sort of backup that if longer term, I think might get the role. He's just back. He got 5 saves last year, as I mentioned. So I would say maybe he's a secondary choice. And the guy that I would argue is a good guy to get sort of on the cheap would be Robert Garcia of Texas. Now he's sort of the backup. I think he got 1 save, Kevin. He's sort of the backup in Texas to Luke Jackson. Luke Jackson. He's 0% owned in 12s, 7% in 15s. And he's pitched very well. And I think, Luke Jackson has never been a great pitcher. I'm a little unsure as to why Bochy landed on him, but he was pitching well for a while, but I'm just not convinced he can keep it up. And I do have Luke Jackson on a couple of teams. So I'm trying to watch that carefully, but Jackson gave up 4 earned runs in his last outing. It could be just a blip, but if you have room for Garcia, I would maybe think about adding him, and then you can see where it leads.
I agree. I also agree with Uncle Ted in the chat, who Liam Hendricks, I was very excited about in the offseason. He had a couple setbacks with his injury and then hasn't performed well initially in the comeback, but he's gotten better. He's gotten better as of late. He has he gave up the 2 earned runs in his first outing and just did
Mhm.
not look good at all, and that was versus the White Sox as well. Didn't look good. Came back, had a clean inning, but, and not any strikeouts versus Seattle. Faced Seattle again and didn't give up any runs, but walked 3 guys, had 1 strikeout, and then in his most recent outing at Cleveland, a couple of strikeouts, no runs. He did walk 1 batter. I think he is progressing very nicely. Chapman looked really good early in the year, but we know Chapman gives up runs. You know that as a
Yeah,
Yankees fan,
yeah,
his ERA and WHIP have never been very good. I think they're better
mm,
this year than they've ever been so
yeah,
far. And we've seen a couple of hiccups recently. We saw Slayton get a save or 2. There was
right.
some talk of him having that opportunity coming into the season even. But I think if Liam Hendricks gets anywhere close to the Liam Hendricks we remember, he is going to take over this job.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, Chapman, I watched him for years, and he loses the plate. I mean,
Yeah.
he throws really hard, but then sometimes he can't control it, and I don't think that's going to play long term. I don't expect him to be lights out all through the season. So I think specking a guy behind him is a good move.
Excellent. Final category, Todd, the wild card section. This is for anybody for any reason that hasn't been brought up earlier in the show. Lots of times it's a stash of some sort, but it can be absolutely anybody. Who you got for a wild card that we might want to consider this week?
Okay, so my guy is Gunnar Hoglund, who he sounds like he's from Sweden, but he pitched at Ole Miss way back. He was going to be the number 1 overall draft choice, or he might have been. It was in 2021, but then they knew he was going to get Tommy John surgery, so he dropped back to the number 19, and he's worked his way back, and he's gone through a couple of organizations. Now he's with the Athletics, and at AAA Las Vegas, he's got 29.2 innings pitched, a 30-7 K to BB, 2.43 ERA, 1.06 WHIP. Now, Las Vegas is one of
Oh
the
yeah.
hitting parks of the minor
That makes
leagues.
Coors look
Yeah.
like a pitcher's
Yeah,
park.
Coors is
Yeah.
like, easy to pitch in compared to Las Vegas. So
Right.
he's doing a job, and they're bringing him up to start tonight. So if people can go back, if they hear this later, they can go back and check how he did. But I kind of hope he doesn't, pitch a 2-hitter because I'd like to try to FAAB him. But I think he's got real potential, and I do think he's going to stay in the rotation. A lot of the projections have other guys coming in and Hoglund not really staying around, but I think he's worth adding at a moderate price because I think he has a chance to stick through the next week or 2 at least. So I would take a look at it. He if he does pitch at Miami tonight, which he will, then he should get against Seattle at home next week, and then we'll see what happens. But that's my wild card. Gunnar Hoglund is the kind of name you don't forget. So I would say take a look at him and see if you can stash him or put him on your bench or do something with him.
I love that. The pedigree, as you said, was going to be possibly number 1 overall pick.
Right.
And then those ratios, pitching his home games in Las Vegas, that those are super impressive
Yeah,
numbers.
yeah. He's
Uh,
given up 3 homers in Las Vegas, but I mean, that the ball just flies out of Las Vegas.
yes.
So I wouldn't. I mean, look, he would be pitching in West Sacramento, so yeah, he could get burned. But I mean, if you're pitching to a 30-7 K to BB, it's going to make up for a lot of sins. So anyway, take a look at him. I think he's got a lot of potential.
I love it. Todd, at this point in the show, Adam typically asks me if I have any other thoughts, any final thoughts, something that didn't come up or expand on something that we did talk about, just any general advice going forward for the rest of this season that you have for our listeners.
Well, I mean, I just echo what I said before, which is try to soft pedal it a bit with your FAAB. Try to be the leader in FAAB remaining going into June. Try to save, for that matter, like $150 for the last 4 to 6 weeks, so you have an ability to add a guy for $5 or $6 instead of like one. And look, it's the one thing I'll say. One of the parts of my weekly article, Kevin, which I'm sure you see, is that I do the Coliseum part, where I look at the uh, most widely added players from 3 weeks ago and try to estimate whether they were a good or bad pickup. And generally, it's been around 40% has been a good pickup. So keep that in mind when you're bidding, is that you've only got about a 40% chance of a guy really panning out. So if you put that lens on it, even though the Nick Kurtzes of the world sound great, some of these guys do not do it for us. I mean, Kurtz even, yes, it's only been like a few games, but he's striking out a lot and he's having adjustment. I mean, it's not easy to hit major league pitching. So, I just feel like people think, well, he's just a no doubter, and it's not really true. It's not. Mike Trout, for all his talent, he struggled the first time very badly. We use up. Anyway, I would just caution that, and then try to have fun with it. Look, we all are trying to make predictions. Make your best guess, and then just live with it. It's part of the fun of the game. You're not going to get every decision right, but the fabbing process is one that I've studied, and I hope that with a little bit more cash in your bank as you go into the later part of the season, you can do better.
Yep, couldn't agree more, Todd. Absolutely love that wrap up there. And that's going to do it for episode 212 of On the Wire. Once again, thank you so much to Todd Whitestone for joining us. Don't forget to follow him at Telstar7 if you don't already. I think most of our listeners probably already follow you, Todd. But after all that, I am Kevin Hasting on behalf of Adam Howe, who will be back next week, and Todd Whitestone. Thank you for listening, and we bid you goodbye.